Hello, this is a blog about why it's Sunday morning and I'm actually sitting at my desk, typing in a mildly coherent fashion on my laptop, as opposed to being completely hungover, bedridden, and dreading doing absolutely anything except laying in my bed and eating KFC. These are the words that started it all.
Welcome to The Human Factor, the show where we explore social change through the eyes of social entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders. My name is Melanie Roussin. Her name is Raine McCabe, and we are your hosts.
Today, we talk to Raine, founder and CEO of Hello Sunday Morning, the largest online movement for alcohol behaviour change in the world. Chris is one part of our series, Youth for Change.
On today's episode, you'll hear about how Chris went from your average guy who works in advertising and spent most of his Sunday hungover to the Queensland Young Australian of the Year for his work promoting mindful drinking and sobriety. Welcome to the show, Chris. If listeners Google Chris Raine right now, they'll see lots of things come up. Queensland Young Australian of the Year, CEO, founder, binge drinker turned sober. But to start off with, how would you describe yourself, Chris?
Well, definitely not sober. I think that's some marketing spin. I am lucky enough to run a not-for-profit called Hello Sunday Morning. And what we do is build software to help people change their relationship with alcohol. So I do that, and my job is to build a really good team of people from technology, from design, from marketing to grow that organization. But personally, I'm really passionate about how we use and can better use drugs in society, and that's the work that really drives me.
Awesome. And so as you said, Hello Sunday Morning, it provides online and technological tools to help people change their relationship with alcohol, whether that's, taking a break from drinking or simply cutting back a little bit. That's a really big purpose. So tell us, Chris, in your words, what's a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, well, I'm lucky that we have a team of 15 super talented people. So my job in the organization is to help them do their best work. So I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a designer, I've got a marketing background, so I can't help there, but we have people that are way better at that than I am. So my job is to really help them do really great work towards our twin goals. Our first goal is to build a brand that's as famous as Beyond Blue for mental health. So that means getting to a national awareness of 90% over the next 3 years. And the second piece is building software that takes the best in the evidence base around treatment for people dealing with alcohol dependence or alcohol misuse issues that want help, and they can access these services for under $100 a year. And so my day-to-day is just to help recruit and support and encourage the people that I think are the skills that are needed in order to achieve those two goals.
Awesome. And so as I understand it, Hello Sunday Morning was sort of born out of an organic experience for the personal change for yourself. What exactly was the tipping point that turned it from sort of a personal blog into this online movement?
Well, when I was 22, I was working as a nightclub promoter on the Sunshine Coast, and I was also working in advertising during the day, and most of my life revolved around drinking and using alcohol, whether it be at work or with my family. And I kind of came to a point where I enjoyed drinking, and I still do to this day. But I was noticing that the kind of way and the patterns of drinking that I was falling into was starting to cost me a bit of health, cost me a bit of goals, sort of rub at the edges of who I wanted to be. And then so I decided to take a little break from drinking for 12 months as a way to reassess my own relationship with alcohol and do something interesting that I think would help me in my career in advertising. And in that process, I really discovered what I feel like my purpose is, and that is to build really scalable software to help people use drugs better. And so that was 7 years ago, and now we've grown Hello Sunday Morning into the largest online platform in the world focused on helping people change their relationship with alcohol, and have just released Daybreak, which we think will surpass the efficacy that we have with Hello Sunday Morning to something much greater.
And so you mentioned it's now worldwide. You're in, the US, the UK, and of course New Zealand, which is just basically another state of Australia, right? Um, but how did you go global? Did that happen organically, or how does one go? Actually, now let's do this everywhere.
Well, when I was younger in my CEO days, I kind of decided I wanted to take it to the world, and probably very prematurely. And so I did all these trips to the US and New Zealand, which was kind of irresponsible on one level, and but very fun. And so that helped, I think, with some of the publicity that we got overseas for that. And it's an issue that really affects all countries, all socio-demographic backgrounds. And so because it's online and it's accessible and mostly cheap or free, and it's something, it's a way that people can get help. And there doesn't really exist much out there other than face-to-face services that have this kind of meaningful place in people's lives. So yeah, we have a great online community from all over the world. The problems that we face as humans are typically the same. They're to do with relationship and dealing with stress and social anxieties, and that doesn't change if you change your country.
And when we look at the website of Hello Sunday Morning, it's clear that it's not like any other charity or even social enterprise out there. So what I'm wondering, Chris, is can you tell us a little bit more about the structure that Hello Sunday Morning operate under?
Yeah, sure. So we have a board of directors, and then of which I'm on, and I chair that. So the job of the board is to make sure that the organisation is a going concern and we're getting money to the door and we can keep doing our work. And then and setting the strategy. And then we have an organisation of 15, including myself, that operate in 3 kind of domains. So there's a clinical team, or a clinical circle we call it, a design circle, and a product circle. And each of these circles work together on their own objectives, but then across those 3 circles to support the team's wider goals. So that's kind of the structure of the organization. Then our business model is a few different ways. One is we have government service contracts. So we sell bulk licenses, so bulk treatment licenses to individual health bodies around the country called private health networks. And those licenses get distributed through GPs. So if you're within one of the 5 regions that we work with, you can get the license for free. And then we have corporate foundation partners, and they typically fund activities that help us achieve our technology goals or help us achieve our branding goals. And our partners are Google, NIB, Vodafone, and Macquarie Bank. And they're all interested in different things, and we have great multi-year partnerships with all of them. And then we have family foundations, so people, individual families that have had an interest in this particular issue, they invest in us in a similar way that the corporate foundations do. And then finally, we have just started having a service delivery for individuals, so people can actually pay for the support that they need themselves if they're not within a PHN region or overseas.
Interesting.
That's very clever.
It's not me.
It's really one of a kind. You just sort of think that all organizations that are working for social good fit a certain existing structure. So it's really interesting to hear that sort of stuff. And you mentioned some of your corporate partners that are philanthropically supporting you. Can you tell us about some of the strategies that you took to actually attract these big names?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a big risk for the issue that we're focused on. It's not like cancer or puppy dogs or some kind of abstract illness. It's a hard sell because it really affects their staff too. And so, but it's a complicated one and there's also this feeling that a company shouldn't meddle in the lives of people's personal choices, and there's so much history around the challenge that we're addressing, which is helping people change their relationship with alcohol. There's so much history around an abstinence first or a probative kind of temperance focus that makes people kind of squeamish anytime you start talking about it, or like you're criticizing or judging them about it. And so for a corporate to back an organization like us, they have to transcend that whole history of kind of a judgment view of this conversation and take a risk with us. And, the slings and arrows of, certain staff members like, oh, what are you telling us to not drink kind of thing. And we're lucky that we've had corporate partners that are brave enough to do that. And with that support, they've taken a risk, and the reward is that actually there's not that many organizations that are focused on the issue that we are. So they get greater, publicity, and we're not out to tell people how much they should drink. So that mitigates against the kind of staff risk, and they actually can help their staff change their relationship with alcohol. So it's definitely our corporate foundation partnerships have been, fantastic. And that's why they are multi-year partnerships. They'll start off with 1 year, one little project, usually to kind of test the waters. And that takes, a good 12 to 18 months of conversations and relationship building to get something like that over the line. And then you just grow together, and more opportunities come. And as we've gotten older and bigger, we've been quite clear on what we want to do. And I think that helps them fund it. Whereas in the past, we've kind of maybe said what we think that they want us to hear we should do, and then use the funds for that, and then also to do what we end up really wanting to do. Sorry, that's a bit confusing, but it's a partnership. Like it's a thing that evolves, and you get to understand your own needs and understand their needs better, and it gets better with the years.
I think when there's a lure of a big amount of money, it can feel easier for the charity or social good organisation to try and fit what they think the partner wants, whereas actually a true partnership, you need to work together to figure that out. So obviously, there's a lot of, I'm the fundraiser in the room, so there's a lot of big sobriety campaigns out there that ask people to fundraise to give up, alcohol, like Dry July, etc. I just had the thought, you guys have got more than 30,000 people on your social media following. So I guess I'm just wondering why you guys don't have a fundraising or donation function as part of your facilities.
We have dabbled in different things. I think we never wanted to make the process of change about raising money. And that's been a philosophical decision that we've made as a team and continue to make, because we feel that when we want to make this change meaningful, and for someone to come to us and go, this is what I want to change in my life. I'm unhappy with my relationship with alcohol. This is where I want to be. And we go, here are all the tools you need and all the ways that you can go about doing it from what we've learned. Here's psychologists if you want to talk to them to do that. And what we believe, rightly or wrongly, is that when it becomes about making money, it almost reinforces the dependence a person places on the drug itself. And, like, oh, Timmy's not drinking for a month, so I'm going to give him a couple of grand to not do that. And then when I finish that month, I'm like, wow, my relationship with alcohol is a couple of grand. That's how much people think it's difficult for me to do it, or that's how much my social capital is on doing it. So I guess that mechanism of fundraising we've kind of taken off the table. However, we're definitely open to doing fundraising, just not to make it about the behaviour change itself, because I think as an organisation, we're more interested in that than raising funds.
You've recently touched on the app that you just launched, Chris, called Daybreak, to provide additional support to your tribe of nearly 50,000 people of your community that you have online. But obviously, this app, people have to pay up to, $59 a year per person. In the app world, it's not exactly cheap. So you're currently calling on the Australian government to provide funding. So I guess my question to you is, how's that going so far? What's the response so far?
Yeah, so I mean, we're converting people to the app. So there are people that pay, and particularly overseas, which is different than in Australia, because you have a single payer model and people can't expect their healthcare free. And so we're doing that, or we're working with these PHNs around the country, and they're buying the licenses that then go out through their GPs. But some of the legislation on what services they can commission, whether they're online or offline, is a bit grey. So there's some work that needs to be done there. But our argument with the federal government is that we can continue to do this, but it's going to ultimately cost the taxpayer more, because with each relationship we have to manage the relationship within the PHN. So rather than 2 million a year, it would be 4 million a year to do that nationally. And so we're in talks with the government on extending what we did originally. So we've already been funded by the federal government in 2014-15, and we've had a break for 12 months, which we've focused on the corporate foundations. And now we're going back to say, we've got a product that works, we can scale it nationally and help 15,000 people a year, and for a fraction of what it would cost, an absolute fraction of what it would cost to do that with face-to-face services. And we can get the data to see who's helped, who needs more help, how do we change and feed that data back into published scientific journals. And it's tiny. Like, the price on that is tiny. So that's what we're kind of pushing towards with the federal government, and it's a long conversation, just like with the corporate foundations, to do that, and that's a good thing, because as a government you don't want them spending money unless it's really going to save the taxpayer dollars, and that's what we have to put a case forward and put good data and evidence to show how that will happen, and the value, why money should be invested in us. But we believe that the value that we provide is worth that investment, and the Australians do want this as a service available when they need it, when they have an issue with alcohol.
You've touched, Chris, on the fact that you have a background in marketing, and obviously now you just talk about the role of obviously the government as well. So I'm quite curious, because also I have a background in marketing, and I'm quite curious to see what you think of this campaign that the government is putting at the moment in terms of the relationship that people have with alcohol. So you may have seen, for example, some of our listener may have seen the ad that, like, the Coward Punch and
One Punch Can Kill.
One Punch Can Kill and all of them. And, we see them on billboard and on TV and all of that. And I wanted to ask you, Chris, because what you're doing is quite unique as well. So I wanted to ask you if you felt that these campaigns are working for or against what you're trying to achieve with Hello Sunday Morning.
It's a pretty complicated question. I couldn't say it's like working for or against, but my thoughts on it, I think, when we first started 6 or 7 years ago, it was in the One Punch Can Kill campaign kind of era, and then you had the alcohol pop tax and a number of other measures that were really targeted at young people and their consumption. And what I think misses the mark with social marketing that does that is that actually it's dealing the problems that people face with drinking. They don't think they're going out to get hit. They don't think they're going out to be sexually assaulted, or no one really goes out with that as a risk in mind until it happens. And it happens to such a small population of people. And the way that you can change that is regulation and improving services and making sure that there's like great facilities for people in those environments that do make that into a much safer space. But when you talk about behavior change around alcohol, which is a couple of steps back, that actually the real problems that people face aren't that at all. The real problems that people face are, how do I go home and not drink a bottle of wine because my work's really stressing me out? How do I lose 5 kilos? How do I actually have a conversation with my partner about reducing my alcohol without feeling judged or feeling like I'm doing this by myself? Or how do I have a conversation with my friends that around not doing shots? These are the real challenges that people face when it comes to drinking patterns of behavior, and they're from a public health perspective, it's really death by 1,000 cuts rather than these really acute problems that often get wheeled out. And in the campaigns that they do, they just don't resonate with people, because no one goes, oh yeah, that's going to happen to me, until it does. And so what I think, and I am starting to see a shift in the way that government is doing more social marketing, is 2 ways. One is it's becoming much more positive in the value and trying to sell the right behavior and trying to really encourage that and make it an attractive proposition to create the behavior that they want. And then secondly, the investment in technology, and in particular with mental health, there's a massive government investment in improving service delivery through apps and portals that people can get in to get help earlier on. And I think this is the future of public health and social marketing, that you have a positive message that inspires people to change. And then when they feel inspired and motivated, that they have somewhere immediately that they can either download or go to or make some sort of small change towards that future. So I think there's, in the last decade, there's been a big shift. And when you get these throwbacks to like Dobbin and Dealer, or let's bring out the Grim Reaper campaign again around this particular problem, that it's that's their vote getters. They're for the parents. They're not for the people that are actually making the choices, and they're all about other people and other people's problems. And it's actually more of a political tool for political expediency than it is about public health.
I couldn't agree more. This is music to my ear, because I have a social marketing background, but I'm also a lecturer in public health. So what you're explaining here is exactly what we try to explain to our students. So basically, these victim blaming type strategy, when it comes to either consumption of alcohol or tobacco, we know that they don't work. And so that's why I really like actually giving example of Hello Sunday Morning, because it's really about giving people the tool to, I suppose, empower themselves to make a change. And I think that's the solution that I like about it. It's providing a solution. It's providing the tool to work with people and not simply just using victim blaming strategies. So I really connect with what you're saying, and I'm quite happy to see that shift, hopefully, in our society as well.
Yeah, and as
revolution,
viva la revolution! As the person who has no health promotion background, I have to say, like the thing you just said about the actual conversations that people are having. I had to have that before my hens night. I had to say to my bridesmaids, "Can you ensure no one forces me to do shots?" Because I didn't want to do that. And that was the real conversation that I needed to have. Not, can we ensure we don't put ourselves in a bad situation that we might get, catcalled. It was like, I don't want to do shots because I'll blank out, and I need to make sure people don't force me to.
And these are hard things. Like it's not an easy, but it's like difficult conversations to have, and that's why, we have psychologists on Daybreak, and that's most of the conversations around. How do you talk to your friends? How do you communicate? And what are the strategies that you can, use to your friends, to your partner, to whoever it is? And it's not the other person's fault, or it's not your friends that are on the hands night fault. That's just human nature. We want to connect with people in the same things that we do, and drinking's no different. And it's the same for eating, like vegetarianism. There's so many. Like the goal of a society, I think, is to embrace diverse choices, but we're constantly realizing that we're so prejudiced towards our own, and that's the challenge. Like that's the constant challenge of being a good human. I think is there's once you realize one, then there's just a whole other layer of other ones, and trying to navigate that is a tough thing.
Absolutely. And so in 2011, going back a couple of years, during a TED talk, you said that your dream was to see Australia's drinking culture be completely different in 10 years. So we're, 6 years into that. How do you think that we're shaping up?
Yeah, I think it's we've certainly contributed to change. I wouldn't say it's like we did it, but young people under 20 are drinking less. They're waiting to have their first drink much later. So there's a shift there. Like within young people, there's like a strong change and strong trend towards drinking more healthily. The real thing I think that we haven't, and that was, a lot of media really drove towards that, and we drove our brand and behavior change apps towards that. But now I think the data has shown that probably the real area of risk and health issue is people that are plus 30 and even older, and the kind of habits of consumption, drug consumption that they have. So a lot of our work particularly with Daybreak, is targeted towards people that are 39 plus. So I think the culture is changing, and the best bit about it is that people are more open to talking about their relationship with alcohol. I think the culture of government communication, even saw in Queensland last week, there was an ad. They literally just put, "Are you happy with your relationship with alcohol?" Which we've like pushed out and trademarked for the last 10 years, and that's the Queensland Health Government ad out there saying that expression, which is kind of flattering but also annoying. But anyway, it's good to see that changing. That there's a stronger movement towards better kind of social campaigning that's more inclusive and encouraging of change. But to really answer your question, I think there will always be more work to do. There will always be people that have alcohol misuse issues. Modern society is tough. We're a drug-taking society, and we use drugs to deal with the issues that we face in such a society. And unless you move out into the sticks and live a very kind of simple, nomadic existence, you're never going to get rid of the way that we use drugs to deal with our lives. And therefore, you're always going to need programs like the ones that we provide to help when you found yourself in a bit of a sticky situation. So I think when I would have made those statements, it would have been with a much greater naivety around what you can achieve, and it's really refined a lot more towards making sure that rather than changing a culture, it's about helping individuals change when they're ready.
Very much so. We've established that I'm a bit the nerd in the room. So I can go past asking you a question on research. I am very impressed with the fact that you've been able to connect the work that you're doing with Hello Sunday Morning with research, with universities. And so what I want to know from you is, I guess, if you weighed in the effort and versus the benefit, I guess, that you got from this process, has that been a worthwhile experience for Hello Sunday Morning? And then what will be your message to other organizations considering research, I suppose?
So the evaluation that we do, we get it done independently, and we look at consumption change in audit, so the WHO audit, the World Health Organization audit scale. And we do that periodically with our members every 3, 6, 12 months. We did that with the online platform on Hello Sunday Morning, and found a significant change with people that got to 12 weeks 6 months later of 37 to 42% in reduction in audit. So it worked for about half the people that went through, showed a reduction there because it's an online platform. There's a lot of people that come on for 2 weeks and then off they go, come back again in a couple of months. And which is a good thing about having a technology, is that you can have as many goes as you like. It's not like a bed where you get it for 3 months and then you stuff up and you go back on a wait list. And so we've taken that as like a good sign that there's lots of work to be done in the technology, but it works for a significant portion of people. So let's invest in that, and that's where we've kind of gone to with Daybreak, and that which was released in October, where we've got the online peer-to-peer support network, but then added in clinical coaching as well. So we'll review the data in a few months once we've got 6 months worth of solid information and solid feedback. And then probably so that's kind of the evaluation. But then what's really cool about building technology that's focused on these things is you can move really quickly with adapting certain products. So, for example, we found on Daybreak that if people posted within the first day and receive 5 comments, they're 10 times more likely to be engaged at 2 weeks than those that don't post. So a lot of our work is focused around, a lot of the product now work is focused around how do we get people to post and then people to comment within that first day. And then people that people that those that comment, get a post, and talk to a coach are twice as likely to drop in urges and cravings than those that don't. So how do we make sure that coaches are being more proactive than being reactive in their coaching? So there's a lot of really interesting data that comes from large populations of people and consistent patterns that you often don't get in traditional approaches to this kind of stuff. So I think, that's sort of evaluation and data. Then there was another bit to your question that I can't quite remember.
So what would be your message to other organizations that may be considering research? Because obviously there is an investment of time and effort on your part as well. But, if you weigh in the benefit versus the effort, what would be your advice?
Look, I think there's two bits. One is you build from the evidence base, but then you focus on data for improvement. So we work with psychologists to go, how do we translate everything that's in your head and what you do into a tech platform? And then once that's done, it's like we've got that knowledge, but now it's very different in an offline environment and often in an online environment, and often in offline environments, the data just isn't collected. The best that you do, because the resources aren't there, as a trained psychologist or a medical professional, it's that you have 6 years of training, then you do supervision and reviews, but you're not storing, collecting all your patients' data and seeing patterns and what's emerging and what isn't working for which kinds of personalities or whatnot. You're just working with one person and then another person and then another person, and that's a very different approach to the one that we take, which is we see thousands of people and see which features and which things are more likely or less likely to help them, and get rid of the ones that are less likely and really work on the ones that are, so we can really distill more of a data-driven product that extends the evidence base. And so for my advice, I think for most businesses is you need to have a tech aspect in the future, and that's a real opportunity for researchers because you can get this really rich data if it's used and shared well. And I think that's something that would be my advice.
Mel's basically fangirling all over the place over here. So, you've made her happy. So we're coming to the end of the interview now, Chris, and what we ask every one of our guests is if they could leave, because a lot of our listeners are on their own social change journey and listen to, basically, suck in your wisdom. If you could leave everyone who's listening today with a few words that they'll really take to heart, what would that be? And that can be anything you like.
A few things. I think one is get really good mentors, and we're lucky as this movement of social entrepreneurship and social enterprise and social impact has grown. We're kind of looking at market-based solutions to social problems. There is a lot of very experienced, very good-hearted business people that didn't get that same opportunity to apply their skills to a social issue. And you can turn them into mentors in the best possible way, and they can open doors for you in ways that I've been helped immeasurably. But you have to ask, and you just send them emails, say, can I catch up for a coffee, or can I do something with you? This is what I want to do. This is how I'm doing it, and I'd love your wisdom. And it's just an enormous wealth of knowledge there. So that has been one of the best things I think that I've ever done in my career as a social entrepreneur. And then the second, there's three things. The second thing I think is a lot of finding partners. Behind every kind of really good organization, there's a bad person that, and I mean that in an endearing way, like there's someone that's really disciplined, very kind of hard-nosed and very numbers driven, that can, you kind of need that. And if you have a really, I think I've become more like that, but it's not a natural skill set. But my business partner is like that, and together we can achieve really good things. So I think you need that duality to work really well and do great things. And I'm always saying yes to things, and he's always saying no, and together we get a really good outcome. So finding a partner like that is I can't tell you how important that is. And then the final thing I think is, don't be afraid of self-promotion or applying for awards or using the media to get your message out there. And there's a kind of a fear of tall poppy thing in Australia around not, being modest and not promoting yourself. But I would argue that if you really believe in what you're doing and believe in the impact and the work that you and your team can have, then, there should be no stone unturned with making it a reality and making it happen. And, the kind of feeling that, I shouldn't really talk about myself or I should be modest or whatever, I think is almost a self-sabotaging thing that I have noticed in some people. So, and you can do it in a good way. You can be lighthearted about it. And you'll certainly be, if you do really good stuff, you'll be lauded and you can accept that humbly, but it helps. It really does help open doors and keeping your foot on that pedal to get your message out there. If you really believe in what you do, I think that's a really important thing. So that would be my 3 kind of pieces of advice.
Well done. At this stage in the interview, we're just about to wrap up, Chris, and I just want to do a bit of a shout out. So if some listeners do want to change their relationship with alcohol, or some organization want to connect with you to support your work, how can they find you?
If you want to change your relationship with alcohol, I would go download the Daybreak app and use that. Or if you're kind of interested in what we're doing and want to support what we're doing, sign up to our newsletter on hellosundaymorning.org or on our Facebook or any of our social channels. And then if you need support or advice or whatever, just get in touch. I'm on chris@hellosundaymorning.org.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
1 out of 3 18 to 24 years old Australians drink to get drunk. That was a stat in 2010.
Coincidentally, 2010 was the year that Hello Sunday Morning actually started. And I guess probably started to address stats just like this. And but what's really interesting that Chris said in the interview was that Hello Sunday Morning are now actually looking towards the 39 plus drinkers, which is not the average age that you'd really think about as having negative relationships with alcohol. You do more hear about the 18 to 24-year-olds, especially in the media, getting really drunk and passing out and punching each other and doing all kinds of terrible things. But Chris's research is showing that no, it's actually now the 39-year-olds that need to address that. And there's been a lot of media sensationalization around that age group, the 18 to 24-year-olds and their relationships with alcohol. And it kind of reminded me of the extreme stories making the best selling point, not only to the media, but also in charity world. You want to hear about the worst case scenario. You want to hear about those stories that make you really tug at your heartstrings and go, oh my God, that's so sad. I have been in the circumstances where I've been writing an appeal letter with a real story, something that actually happened of people that we're helping, and had people turn around and say, no, it's not sad enough. It's not extreme enough. You need to make it more sad. And you sort of have to reflect, are these things making a real difference?
And this is what Chris talks about when he talks about addressing real change, isn't it? And, if we're thinking about alcohol, we can think about people who are alcoholic, and really have this addiction to alcohol. But the reality is the majority of the population will have a degree of unhealthy relationship without alcohol. And the problem is that sometimes it can be a situation, for example, you were talking about your hands night in terms of the shots. It can be, I'm coming home from from work, being a little bit stressed out and having a glass of wine, or being in a social event and feeling a bit peer pressure to drink. And so how do you have this conversation? And these are the things that people are facing every day. That's the real change.
Yeah. Hello Sunday Morning are actually addressing those real conversations that you actually need to have, not those far off scenarios that may or may not happen, but could probably be quite a low occurrence, And it actually made me think of something really random. I kind of it was funny enough, I was hungover on a Sunday and I was watching TV and they were playing reruns of the latest season of The Biggest Loser. And I was sitting there with a friend of mine who we were sitting there going, oh, these people are not actually that big. And then we were doing some Googling and there's been a lot of backlash about how these contestants are not fat enough. They're not fat enough to go on The Biggest Loser. It seems that our society wants these extremes or otherwise they don't want to know about it at all. But in reality, the majority of Australians are not 300 kilos overweight. They're more, obese. They're not in the morbidly obese category. They're in the mildly obese category. And so aren't these contestants on The Biggest Loser actually reflecting the real population and therefore actually helping to address proper change?
It's very, very interesting. So another thing that I think is a great takeaway for our listener is how do we address social change in the terms of our operation? So if you're a small charity or a small social enterprise, I mean, Hello Sunday Morning has only 15 employees, yet they have 3 distinct departments. They have the clinical, design, and product. And I think this is a huge takeaway because sometimes we can think that, I'm too small to be that structured. And it's the same when we're looking at his income source, having 4 different type of income sources, which I think is play a huge part in his success as well. So sometimes we don't need to fit into a specific model as well for that, and to have that structure, I think, and that creativity with that structure is important no matter which size you are.
It's really refreshing because, and I know, obviously there's a lot of backlash or interest from the outside world saying charities should operate this way, or social entrepreneurs. But it's also a crutch that they lean on themselves. They say, well, I am too small, I'm too young, I don't have to be that way yet. But in actual fact, Hello Sunday Morning are proving that no matter how old you are or how big, you can do it. The Goody Bag. Okay, so for this month's Goody Bag, I am putting in a free online service accessed via YouTube, and it's called Yoga with Adriene. So Yoga with Adriene is a free YouTube channel that anyone can access, and it gives you free videos, free yoga workouts. So I find that really awesome because I don't have a lot of time to go to yoga classes. They're always on set times, and I usually get the inclination to do yoga either at like 4 a.m. in the morning or 9 p.m. at night. And what I really like about Yoga with Adriene is she's a little bit of a dork from Texas. She makes really funny jokes, which I appreciate. Like, I know some people wouldn't appreciate that. But she also sets up her yoga videos to be for things specifically. So it might be like yoga for tight hips, or yoga for anxiety, or yoga for digestion even. So you can really pick and choose what you want to achieve out of your workout. And in the last sort of 4 months, I've been working really hard with like being more mindful and taking more time to relax. And so this service has really helped me out with that. So check her out on YouTube, Yoga with Adriene.
So since we're talking about mindfulness today and also mindful drinking with Chris, I want to talk about organic tea. So there's this brand called Puka that I love to drink. They're 100% organic herbs. And I guess why it's important to drink organic tea is because when something is certified organic, you know that it hasn't touched any chemical fertilizer, pesticide, or insecticide. And obviously, I don't want that in my tea. So when you're brewing it, it's going into the water. And what they're saying is that you're best not to drink tea at all than drinking tea that's not organic. So I just love it. I did a bit of research on the company itself. And what I found is that they're carbon neutral. And then 1% of all the profit that they have is going back to help causes with the environment. So that's pretty good. But it's also it's good for you, obviously better for your health, but it's also better for the farmers and better for the environment. So I'm quite a big fan of tea. Plus, I love the fact that they're all packaged in their little pack because I carry them with me wherever I go. So I really like that brand. They taste amazing, and I really recommend them.
We've got a very wholesome and delicious goodie bag this month. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please head to iTunes and rate us, and then head over to our Facebook page, The Human Factor, and hit like and join in the conversation. Tell us what you thought about this episode. And if you have thoughts or insights to add to anything Chris said today, leave us a comment. Have you ever been inspired to make a huge change from a personal experience? Maybe you're rethinking your attitude to drinking. Please join in the conversation or just say hello.
Or you can tweet us at _human factor or visit the website at humanfactor.com.au and say hello via a voicemail or a message. This show is just one part of a community that really wants to affect and grow social change. So if you have a topic or a person that you would like us to interview, please let us know.
You're all awesome, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, it's Erin here. I just wanted to put in a plug for our Patreon campaign, which is your chance to give up just one coffee a month. I'm talking like $3 here, and make a donation to our Patreon campaign, which would cover the cost of producing the podcast for us, which would allow us to free up our brain space of worrying about the cost of producing the podcast for you and actually allow us to think about awesome guests and awesome new topics to cover on the human factor. So if you'd like to become one of our change makers and join us by supporting us on our Patreon campaign, go to patreon.com/thehumanfactor and follow the prompts to become one of our change makers.